and welcome to Catholics Coast to Coast. I'm Ace McKay, always enjoying the summer together as we get to do so by hanging out at Podcast Central. Lots of great conversations to be had, great ones you can take with you on any of your summer breaks, and then the ones you fall in love with, share those with your friends as you deepen your walk with God. As we dive in this week, the great thing to do first is check out Podcast Central, EWTN.com/podcast, and while you're there, you want to click on Poco A Poco because as the summer begins, the friars are talking about how to enter a season of more space, flexibility, rest, something I definitely need some in my life. But we do that without drifting into idleness. Whether it's the summer break, the vacations, or the weekends, we can sometimes get into a change of rhythm that's not good for our relationship with God. So let's dive in and get advice and challenges from Poco A Poco on this week's Catholics Coast to Coast.
Poco a poco vamos a llegar. Somos peregrinos and you know that's who we are. We make our way.
Hey, I'm Father Mark Mary.
Hey, I'm Father PT.
Hey, everybody. Father Innocent.
What's up?
What's going on, my people?
My people.
How long's your beard been about that length, Father PT?
This? I don't know.
I feel like it's been a while.
Yeah. Since ordination, it's been longer. So, yeah. I don't know why I made the change. I just think new state of life, new ontological, not being ontological mark. Just, change it up. Let I experience my faith. I don't know.
When I was, as a lot of the listeners know, I had a pretty distinguished career with, on the End One tour, the End One mixtape tour.
Well, I don't know if actually the listeners are aware of that. So could you please explain a little bit more?
My name was Ontological Mark.
Ontological Mark.
Yeah, that's what they call me on the court.
And One Mixed Tour, for people who don't know, is just this basketball tour of playing street ball. And
not for them. It's not for them.
People would have nicknames. So Father Mary is delusional and thinking, first of all, that he could play basketball. Secondly, that he would be on this tour. And so...
What are some of the other ones? There was the professor.
Escalade.
That's what I was thinking about. The main event. Headache. Hot sauce.
Skip to my Lou.
Played in the NBA.
Yeah.
And don't forget Ontological Mark.
You guys are
I was
crazy.
getting deep out there. So here's a question for you. Actually, this is funny. I'll tell this. But at the dinner table, I was talking about when you and I lived together at the beginning, Father PT. Mm-hmm. And a couple of stories came up. The classics. Applesauce, of course. Uh-huh. Applesauce came up. Father PT wouldn't have my applesauce. The Ave Verum.
Yep.
Talked about, but then we moved forward to volcanoes. So, but anyway, that's all. I'll get into it. But for another day. Yeah. Because I'm going to ask a different question, I think. But one of the questions that was like, the guys asked, so what was like, first year TP? Oh, that's what I was talking about the day I almost left.
Okay.
That whole thing. But they were asking, they were at the 3 hours I almost left. They were asking what was first year TP Father Mark Mary like. Mm-hmm. So maybe some other day we'll explore that together. How you guys would think about yourselves when you were like, didn't have gray hair.
Yeah.
But the question I have today is more wholesome.
Okay.
Wholesome is, and I'm going to give the answer again, just so you know, I don't like whatever that's called. When I ask you a question, you think I mean one thing, I mean another. So what is, as a priest, like what's the best compliment to get? Like what is something that someone says or does that for you as a priest, like is really moving? It means a lot. And I think for me, it is, hey, would you be able to hear my friend's confession? Right. Where for me, it's like, especially if there's like, hey, this person, it's been a long time, or they're like really nervous. Like, would you be able to do this? Where it's like, because obviously part of it is like, for me, trust is a big thing. Like, oh, okay, I trust that you can like love this person, be with this person in this like spot. For me, that like is really moving. It means a lot to me. Do you guys as priests have anything that's like, yeah, this like, when this happens, this really means a lot to me?
This might sound, I don't think it sounds sick. I'll say like when somebody cries.
Okay.
I mean, like, I don't want people to cry, but like that just means the person's safe and they're able to express their emotion and like there's something deep happening. And it doesn't have to be in confession. It could be like in a conversation or like even sometimes I get in mass, like people are moved to tears or whatever it is, not by my preaching, but like what's happening. And so I think that's my favorite thing to see. Like, wow, there's something at the heart level that's happening that's deep and it's just beautiful. And I just get the privilege of, cool, like this is the Lord and here you go. So what about you, Father Innocent?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'm challenged by it. And I like these questions because I would never like, I don't want to, I just don't want to, kind of, don't want to come across as like prideful or, but this is a newer, consistent reality, but I think it's something that's happened, that I think accompaniment in really like being with someone in the spiritual life is deeply meaningful. And so I'm just super humbled recently in my new responsibility, like brothers reaching out and saying, hey, like, would you lead my 8-day? Or would you lead my 30-day? I'm like overwhelmed. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm like so humbled by that. And I'm like so grateful for that they would invite me like into their interior life for a lot, like an 8-day period or a 30-day period, just to be with them and to love them. I'm pretty overwhelmed by that. And then, the brothers that I'm speaking of are outside my door right now.
Were they responding to what you said?
They were like, direct me right now.
Okay, that's funny.
I just heard one of the brothers yell and get excited about something. So anyway, I just think I feel that like it's just deeply moving and humbling. And it's, if we call it a compliment, I'm just like, wow, like if I just did that the rest of my life, just walked with brothers in that space, I'd be super humbled.
Is there, like, Father PT kind of gave it the language of like someone feels safe around me. Is there a word that you'd give to like when you feel that somebody invites you to accompany them on like a retreat like that? Can you kind of define like a little bit, give a name to like what it is about that they appreciate that they can experience in you?
Yeah, because I don't know if it's actually that different than like what we're talking about, but I think
sure, I don't necessarily either.
Yeah, no, I just think it's great to name it, because what happens in that space is when someone like just invites me to see them and to bless them and then in the deep places, and so I feel like it's like maybe being seen or maybe kind of being blessed, particularly in prayer. So I think there's a safety and a security to that they could like open that space up for me. That just like super humbling. But I think there's something about being able to see them and bless them in their interior life that like opens up, and it just gives me a ton of joy. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it names it, or we're trying to name it. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I wonder if, cause I kind of asked you, cause it does sound like from the outside looking in, maybe the three of us, really at its core, it's a pretty similar experience of somebody kind of like feeling safe, trusting us, inviting us into, kind of a sacred place that's also like vulnerable to do so. And I wonder if, is that like how is that like, would that be the same answer from every priest? Is that like a CFR thing? Is that the fruit of our Franciscan charism or not? I don't know.
Yeah, I love thinking about that because I think there's something about the humanity, the safety, the creating a space around people. I think there's something about like people being able to be themselves and show up authentically and feel loved and cared for. So I think there is something about that that's consistent, and it's kind of cool to think about.
Yeah, I do think there is a universal priest experience though in it, right? So I don't think it's just like we have a corner on the safety people, but sometimes priests can, like in general, even CFR priests can just show up poorly to something, right? And can hurt people and miss people. But I think for us as a community, besides the prayer and the work with the poor, I think there's just like this concrete, like we're just in messes constantly. And once again, it's like I think it's a universal priest thing. but just being okay with being in messes and not like overly reacting to things, and just kind of being calm and a good presence in that space that feels like turmoil for somebody, I think helps people feel free and feel safe to express what's happening in a deeper space. And so, yeah. So I think it's a both and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. What stands out is I wonder as well, though, is like, I think there's something about this which I do think is noteworthy. It's not, the things that we care about are like people allowing us to care for them, journey with them in like a, as priests in a spiritual way, which much more than like, hey, like I love your podcast or whatever, or
It's true.
or you're cool. It's like, yeah. Okay. But also I just want, like, I think it can be a bit of an icon and insight into the heart of God too. Like, I think, we can spend a lot of time into like, I'm going to do all this sort of stuff for him, like put on this show and give this beautiful gift and offering when, and like if somebody puts together something nice for us, like, thank you. But, like what God wants the most is like your heart and your trust, and for you to like share vulnerably and honestly with him, for you to feel safe around him, for you to allow him to see you, which you can do without like any actually form of sort of perfection in all these ways or great asceticism or whatever, but just like sharing your heart with him and letting him be there and see you, I think is like a really beautiful and pleasing offering to our Heavenly Father as well. So,
yeah, beautiful.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Let's get into the episode here. First of all, I hope people heard and they can put in what happened when you were saying you love leading people on retreat. Is somebody heard you who you were leading on retreat and responded to that, or was that Father Innocent, or was that person yelling totally just at the same time, or was it in response to something you said?
No, I mean, I don't think they heard what I said. Well, I don't think they heard what I said.
What did they say?
It was, well, I don't want to say who it was.
Oh, it wasn't, but it wasn't like leave me right now.
I don't.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right. Anyway, making him squirm a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyway, I hope that happens. I would love for us to have more, like the guys when we used to record all together in person in Harlem, guys would joke about, I'm going to come in, bust in. I was like, that would have been awesome, actually. I like when stuff like that happens. All right. So what we're talking about is this, and I hope it's not like actually, I think that was like a wholesome, sweet beginning of the episode, and it's maybe a different tone than the rest of the episode. But congratulations, Brother Francois, who just became Deacon Brother Francois yesterday. Congratulations to all the guys who are ordained priests for New York, May 23rd, and all the other ordinations happening. But we're coming to May, which is here in seminary world, the end of the school year, and in a lot of places, end of the school year. So basically, we're gonna break it down or look at it in 3 applications or 3 levels of breadth that are a similar thing. Is like, how do you do summer well? So part of this is, speaking towards, for example, high school students, college students who have like a classic summer break where they have 2 or 3 months off and a lot of their responsibilities are put on hold. So like, what do you do with that? But also understanding a lot of, adults, for them, summer break isn't summer break in that sense, and work continues, etc. But I do think summer is oftentimes, a season when people go on vacation or something like that. So it can speak towards people going on vacation, or even, I think, weekends. The idea is when you have space and you have perhaps a more extensive amount of space, or you have space which doesn't have a clear intention or direction or obligation, how do you use that time well? What are good practices? What are some sort of factors there to be aware of, because they could be detrimental and you want to have like a plan for? Most, like the one that I'm getting at, I mean the most is, especially if it's an extended summer break, is just being aware of idleness. I think it's actually, Saint Benedict who first refers to idleness as like an enemy to the soul. Saint Francis certainly quotes that, like the brothers who are to work, with a spirit of prayer and devotion, making sure nothing sort of supersedes whatever the spirit of prayer and devotion, but also like being aware of idleness, the enemy of the soul. Idleness would be this, like, I don't have an intention, I don't have a direction, my will is not engaged, and sort of I'm out going with whatever current comes and whatever flows, and I'm going to go in all sorts of different directions. But often this can leave me very vulnerable to the passions, and the currents that are going to move me are going to be ones that aren't necessarily of the Lord. And it's and again, I think that there's a way in which we can kind of get in trouble on weekends as well. We can get in trouble on vacation. And the last thing I'll say before throwing out to you is like just a break. Like we want to find like real helpful, wholesome recreation, rest, recovery, all that sort of stuff. But in all days and all seasons, Jesus's like invitation of pick up your cross daily and follow me applies. And it's not, the daily refers to each day. And so there is like a free conscious choice to follow Jesus that we have to make every day. And you don't actually get a break from your vocation to charity. And so, with kind of that groundwork laid, or that sort of framing of the conversation, what do you guys got to say?
I mean, I appreciate your bold start there. I mean, idleness is like, or you think of acedia, like the kind of the noonday kind of distracted kind of, where the kind of darkness, spirit, like discouragement, kind of this. Can
you define it a little bit more for those who don't?
Yeah, so it's very similar to idleness, but acedia is kind of like it's kind of a spiritual sadness. And so like I am idle and I lack purpose, and it's kind of subtle as well. So I begin to wish life was different. I begin to get distracted or grasp at other things. But it's interesting. The fathers talk about like a spiritual sadness where I'm just kind of heavy, but you might not even know it. You just kind of feel heavy and you feel a bit disconnected or off from the Lord. So again, I just think it's a strong start, and I think it's awesome that we kind of named those things well. And Father Mark Mary, I guess it's funny, the notes I had are things you already said, but I kind of named them. No, it's okay. No, I just to name them a little differently. Like I think just to remind everybody that we're actually made for Sabbath rest. And so when we talk about like vacations and we talk about summer break, we talk about even the weekends, we're actually made to kind of take a step back and to rest with God, to rest with each other, to rest kind of in ourselves, where we're not like going from thing to thing to thing. And we're not kind of exerting energy and worldly things. We're actually supposed to take a deep breath and to receive once again the gift of just being a child and son or daughter of God. And so I think Sabbath rest. So I just hold that out there. Like, do we Sabbath well? Do we really know? And I got a lot of thoughts on like practicals, but the point is, I think as a culture, I think as Americans, I think, anyway, I just don't know if we know how to Sabbath, or I don't know if we know how to stop and really like allow for the change of schedule, the change of space. I don't know if we know how to prioritize. I don't know. Anyway, so I think I would love just the gift of Sabbath. Like I just want to bless people in the reality that God wants them to rest, and how really, I think how beautiful that could be. And again, the reality was there, or the other part of my comment was, is this reality that we just don't want to take a break from what's most important, right? That's not the point. And so Father Mark Mary's comment on like, we don't get like a pass on living the gospel or living intimacy with God. We don't get a pass on that. And I'm not saying anybody would want that, but our life has to maintain this groundedness and stability in the Lord. And so, yes, I maybe am out of a different schedule of college or things like that, but we really want to make sure we're anchored, like Father Mark Mary, you said, like keeping the first things first. I just think, again, like even on vacation, even as the schedule changes for more rest in God or more rest in life, we we do got to remember that it's not a reorientation of our hearts away from God to other things. It's living this rest or this vacation or doing fun things, leisure. It's doing that with Him, like receiving everything from Him. And so just to plant people in the stability of their relationship with the Lord and looking ahead is super important.
Thank you, Captain Rest. But I think there's, I think you both said it, but for me, what comes up specifically summer and vacation and just a different schedule. I like sports a lot. And so it's like off season, right? And you don't necessarily, like for an athlete, a professional athlete or somebody who's pursuing something, you don't just, cool, like this is summer vacation now, or like this is off season, I'm just going to sleep for the next whatever X amount of months. And there is a portion of like rest and recuperation, but at the same time, you still have to be structured and intentional with what you do. So meaning if it's, getting reps up or doing these different things. And so once again, for me, it helps with these images of, like as foolish as it would be for like a professional athlete just to take the time off of like not doing anything in the off season. I think it's foolish for us to think that we're going to grow in the spiritual life if we take this vacation time like as a vacation from the Lord and just I'm just going to whatever live totally different than I would in the way that I would live during the school year or during whatever it is. But also recognizing too, like, I think rhythm helps and having some sort of like set structure to our days. And I think this is the problem that sometimes we could run into where in school or even if it's a job and like we're making the transition from one thing to another or even it's vacation where it goes from, okay, I have my routine of waking up, breakfast, class, or waking up, kids on the bus and doing all these different things. And then once that routine is taken away and we kind of find our rhythm with the Lord in that routine, then it's almost like, okay, what do I do? It's like it's almost, it's just very shocking for us sometimes. But just to be creative about it, I think is helpful where, okay, like what's going to be the new rhythm in this season in summertime where I have a little bit more space for maybe prayer, or I'm going to make sure instead of the 8:00 mass, if there's a noon mass I can go to, or like just trying to figure out with the Lord, like what's the best way to encounter His heart during this new season, and to not let the fire or the desire of relationship with Him to die out, especially during this vacation time or during the change in schedule, because ultimately, like He wants to encounter you in this space, and it could be going back to sports where. Like it's cool to see athletes who have picked up a particular trait or they're like, because of the work they put in the off season, they come back better. And so what would it look like for us if we're on this time of vacation or in this time of being away from the regular rhythm, if we can start to pick up like, oh my gosh, I can go to mass daily in this space and I can carry that into my school year. Or like, daily prayer is possible, or I have access to my heart in a different way because I've been with the Lord in this space. Or maybe it's like looking at just taking a retreat time, like in this time of vacation or space. But my desire, or like what I'm trying to communicate is not letting that desire for holiness to wane and to die out just because we're on vacation. It doesn't mean a vacation from the Lord, but it means more so just a time of rest and allowing the Lord to be with us in a new way and us to encounter His heart in a different way.
Yeah, thank you. And I think a variety in our schedules is helpful, and it creates an opportunity as well for us to grow in self-knowledge. Like, okay, here's a new environment, and here's an opportunity, to be curious about, to observe how I respond, how I react, and like, let's see what that says. And so I think, as we, again, and I want to get out ahead of this, like a summer break and, a weekend or family vacation, or whatever, are quite different things. And so what you can do and expect to do in each is different, right? Some of the basic principles I think apply to all of them, though. They apply to all of them. But what I was going to say is this idea, hearing this, say you're on break, if prayer feels like, oh man, like this is heavy. Do I really have to like these guys are saying I got to still pray when I'm on the cruise. Or if trying to like being good, continuing to be moral and not like becoming gluttonous or falling into drunkenness or lust, whatever, if that feels like a burden, or if the idea of having intentionality in your life and having some sort of schedule feels like I'm just too tired for that. I think these are helpful experiences to have then to reflect on, right? Like, okay, do I experience like, is the only way I feel like I can get rest like in isolation or away from the Lord? Do I feel like I need a break from God's law? Do I feel like I need a break from trying to pray? Am I so tired that the idea of like having intentionality while on break or whatever, it just feels like such a burden? I think this can be reflective of, okay, maybe you're doing too much. Like the idea that you feel this heavy is probably the idea that you're like depleted, as we might say, so someone who's not sleeping well and then they're not eating well and they're like, I just keep eating bad. It's like, well, the reason you're not making good choices there and going to the easy thing is because you're so tired, That's why the idea of stopping and making a tuna salad or whatever sounds too hard. It's like you're just too tired. So I think all these are opportunities to kind of reflect, but our listeners aren't CFRs. But I do think that there's some, like on a Sunday, we still have about 5 hours of, if you will, communal obligation. Most of it's prayer. It's like prayer and spending time together. And I think baked into that is this understanding, like that we don't envision rest and renewal being something that we do in isolation. And it's not something that we like God wants to be part of it. And he actually has something to offer us that is necessary part of like renewal. And also we don't get to just find it in isolation. Like there's like an idea that like our brothers, our family are going to be part of that. Like that they are part of the way in which God wants to renew us and give us rest. And again, like we just don't get a vacation from, we can say from, in our situation, from our vocation, but ultimately from charity.
Prayer at the center, stay connected to others, and choose wholesome fun as we look for small ways to love each day. Great stuff from Poco A Poco. If you want more on this conversation or ones you might have missed, easy to find when you go to Podcast Central, EWTN.com/podcast. And then, of course, subscribe wherever you like to stream so you don't miss future episodes. I'm Ace McKay. When Catholics Coast to Coast returns, we're going to dare great things, because in 97 and in 2000, Pope John II sent a letter to all his priests emphasizing a very important truth, and that is that priests have to lead with who he is. So an important fact as we lean into that, well, does it still apply in 2026? We'll get more of that from Dare Great Things next on Catholics Coast to Coast.
Another great podcast on EWTN Podcast Central is Power and Witness. Father Mark Mary and his guests discuss the witness of faith as they dive into the profound message of divine mercy from Faustina's revelations to the transformative power of the Holy Spirit in the world today. You can hear this and other faith-filled podcasts at EWTN Podcast Central. Visit EWTN.com/radio and click on Podcast Central today.
Dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
In both 1997 and the year 2000, Pope John Paul II sent a letter to all the priests in the world, as was his custom. In both of these letters, he emphasizes a very important truth. The priest has to lead out of who he is. As important as this might be for priests to remember, it's also important for all leaders to remember. Jesus doesn't lead in abstraction. He asks us to give ourselves. Learning how to do this well is an essential aspect of Christian leadership. Hi, everybody. So glad to be back with you again. And I just love to meditate on these letters from John Paul II. I want to wrap up this series here with some insights from both 1997 and the year 2000 for us. These are meditations that are coming from letters that Pope John Paul II wrote to every priest in the Catholic Church throughout the world on Holy Thursday. It was a custom that he began at the very first year of his pontificate to write to all the priests of the world. And of course, priests, as we know, are very important parts of the leadership structure of the Catholic Church. And so it's interesting to just see what lessons we can take from what he writes to priests for our own roles there in lay leadership, in business, in the family, in culture, in civic society, wherever we're called to lead by Christ. Because obviously there's going to be many really rich lessons here in words that the Pope addresses directly to priests that we can also take to apply in Christian leadership across the board. And I want to focus today in a seminal insight that he puts both in 1997 and the year 2000 in different kind of words, but it comes to the same thing. And that's this concept that Christ calls us to lead by giving not just him, but ourselves in the process. And I think this is important because it immediately asks the question, well, I mean, what kind of gift are we giving? Like, are we healthy? When we give ourselves, we might be giving ourselves in the best form that we have, or are we giving ourselves perhaps as damaged goods? I mean, if I'm gonna be a conduit of grace, in other words, I'm gotta be responsible for taking care of that conduit. And so I need to ask myself where I'm at with my self-care. Right. And this is a really important point, I think, because you might not think of it as being important for yourself. And most of the time, successful leaders are not really very good at self-care. Okay, we got to where we got because something's driven us, something's pushed us, there's a fire within us. But that fire that's within us, it can be the fire of God, sure. But what kind of wood or what kind of fuel is that fire consuming? That's going to become part of the flame as well. And the fire of God can burn, wet wood, and it can burn dry wood, and it can burn impure things. The fire can burn, but the flame is going to be in a mixture of that fire and the fuel that we give it. And so if we look at our lives and we say, gosh, it's amazing what God has done through me. He's founded 3 companies and I'm selling one off, or he's allowed me to rise through the ranks to become a senior manager. You start looking at the successes that you've had, and maybe the failures too, but the way you've bounced back from those failures, right? And the relationships that maybe have been sacrificed along the way, but that now you're enjoying success in different aspects of your life. And you look back over the whole different scope of your existence, and you can, of course, relish in the good and regret the bad. But when we take stock of what it's made us, a lot of times we don't really want to recognize that there might be a shadow side there too. That maybe the success that we're enjoying, just go with me here. It might be on the outside. It might be what the world can award us with, a pats on the back, the mysterious blue ribbon, so to speak, that other people can give us because of our title or even just the stability that we've achieved in our companies. And, when everyone around us recognizes us as a leader, maybe even our spouse, they can say, you know what, you're an amazing leader in the world. And if we're not careful, and I say that on purpose, we can be satisfied with that. And the reason it's not that it's bad, it's just that it's only what other people give us. And I'm kind of enamored by the mystery of Christ, because it says in the gospel that Jesus does not take praise from other human beings. He says it in John 5:41. He says, I do not take or receive glory from men. It's a really kind of puzzling thing because most of us do, right? And most of us, if we're not careful, will end up judging how well we think we're really leading based upon, what our followers say of us, or maybe our competitors say of us, or maybe those in the same industry say of us. So why doesn't Jesus receive glory from men? Why doesn't he take praise from human beings? And yet he refuses it. And I think it's not to say that these things are bad, right? But it's to say that there's something deeper, another standard that Jesus lives by, and that I dare say he wants us to live by as well. It's the standard that human beings don't have access to, the standard of the heart. And this is where God speaks to us, right? And where God expects us to be truly great in his eyes. And it's where other eyes might fall short. And God bless everybody. And, it's certainly not a bad thing. We need external praise if we're going to be effective in moving things in this world in a worldly way. But a Christian is called to do both. You see, we're both called to be effective in the world, but that's because, and first of all, primarily, we've been approved in the eyes of God. And that's a different challenge for us. And where I'm going from it with this is that, of course, in our leadership, we are all trying to move the needle on the outside. We're trying to get the next project done. We're trying to do the next strategic plan. We're trying to hire the next person. We're trying to make the budget correct. We're trying to vision where we want to go with our company. We're trying to innovate new products. We're trying to lead our teams better. We're trying to meet our quarterly goals. These things that kind of function as the heartbeat of what we do every day in business. Or if we're in civic leadership, it's the same thing. We're trying to make the improvement in the group. We're trying to make the impact, through the thing that we started. Whatever it is in our leadership, there's going to be this drumbeat, this heartbeat of daily tasks and work. It's just that there's always something that's happening at the same time that we're doing those. The same time that we're doing those, we are giving ourselves, that there's a part of us that comes through all of that. And if the part of us on the inside that shines through the outside, and this is where we have to take stock of this, because if our inside is hollow, then that hollowness, that emptiness, that shallowness is going to be made visible and manifest on the outside as well. And even if we're successful, therefore, in terms of the outside, and our numbers are fantastic and our growth is great, whatever, what kind of damage have we brought, even to the culture of the company, if we've done so with a hollowness or a lack of love, a lack of care, a lack of empathy, right? The different things that we might struggle with on our inside. And so it's not to say that we're ever going to be perfect at this, but it is a question of saying, am I aware of where I am at in my person? Because everything that I give on the outside comes from the inside. And am I willing to let God work with me there? If Jesus is going to say, I don't take glory from men, it's because men don't know what's on the inside. Only God does. Where does Jesus accept glory? He says it in John 17, from the Father, from the gaze of God in his life. And then there's a question for us. If God were to gaze into my heart, what would he find? Who would he find? And do I have the courage to give that through my actions and with my actions? Do I have the courage to love the world enough to not only serve it on the outside, but to do it with my own heart? Is my heart capable, willing to burn with the love of Christ in a beautiful and pure flame? This is a challenge that Christ puts in front of us.
Would you like to hear more from Father Nathan? Join the St. John Leadership Network and receive a 2-minute glance at the gospel every Sunday morning right to your phone. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
One of the reasons I'm really enthralled with this series on the Pope's letter to priests, I understand that for many people it's a bit of a stretch because you say, I'm not a priest, I'm not even Catholic, so what is the Pope's letter to priests going to teach me about Christian leadership? But I say you need to take it out of the context of the priesthood and look at the challenge that the Pope is giving to these men who have, stood up to lead, obviously in a sacramental way, in a way different from business. But there's points that he makes that can be applied to both realms. And the point that he makes in 1997 to priests is that when they lead, they have to do so from the heart. In paragraph 5, for example, he literally says, friends, this is what Jesus calls the apostles. This is what he also wishes to call us. That's just an amazing thing. Then he develops the specifics about, being a priest and what priests do in the person of Christ, that makes them friends. But I just want you to meditate on that. Like when Jesus makes his apostles into his ministers, he asks them to do so as his friends. We think about, for example, that scene in John 21 after the resurrection when Jesus is there with Simon Peter, who's going to lead his church and do all kinds of things for him right on the outside. Peter's going to have to organize a church. He's going to have to oversee things. He's going to have to make decisions. He's going to have to lead the company of apostles in the name of Christ. And what does Jesus ask him? He says, Simon Peter, do you love me more than these? It's kind of a crazy question. I mean, Peter says, Lord, you know that I love you. And then Jesus tells him what to do, feed my sheep. And then he asks him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And Peter has to respond. He responds 3 times to this threefold interrogation of Christ. It's almost like Christ wants that inside of Peter to be authentic. Peter, do you love me? Before what you can say you do for me, I want to know whether you're my friend. It's almost like friendship with Christ is more important to Christ than what Peter's going to do for him. And I think, I dare say it is, right? Because if we're doing things just on the outside without being his friend, I'm not sure that that's really why Jesus called us into leadership. I don't think he called us into leadership because we're doing something no one else could do, or we're doing something that he couldn't do himself. Like he called us into leadership because he wanted to share that action with us, to share intimacy with us by letting us do what he does, to know him from the inside. Well, that requires of us a response that's more than skill and dedication and drive. It's a response in love, a response from the heart. I'm following you, Jesus, into my leadership. And therefore, like when I bring myself into leadership, I'm bringing someone who's in love with you. And this is a real challenge, I know, for many of us, because it's like a level that a lot of people don't want to go to. And so that's why I kind of smile, because of course I am a priest, and I smile and say, welcome to leadership, the leadership lessons from priests, right? Because I mean, this is what we have to deal with as priests. We're literally standing in the person of Christ. It's an immense responsibility for us to echo on the inside what we live on the outside. What I like to say in the same way, if you have any role of leadership in a business, what you're doing there, is in the footsteps, in the position somehow or other, to some degree or other, of God, because all authority comes from above. Jesus even says that. And so do you give to that as a real act of service? Do you lead as a real act of service? Not just providing on the outside, but providing on the outside from a love that comes on the inside. And I dare say this is an opportunity, right? What an immensely beautiful and satisfactory way of looking at what you're doing. You don't have to say, in other words, that I'm leading for myself. You can say, if you're a Christian, I'm leading as a gift. And that means that then suddenly I got to ask, well, how am I giving that gift? What do I look like on the inside? Do I have all kinds of, shadows that appear of neediness, of lack of, being affirmed, lack of friendship? How I look at myself and how I see myself, represents, a real evidence for how other people are going to receive my acts of leadership. Because the way that I look at myself is going to be mirrored in how I give myself to you. If you want, I remember one time I was at a leadership seminar, and the instructor had us do something. He said, I want you guys to go out, think about right now, someone in your staff, someone in your company who will actually tell you the truth. Maybe you know them for a long time, someone that that you think this person actually knows what's really going on in the company. And he says, I want you to go out right now. And he stopped the class. And he said, y'all have 20 minutes to pick up the phone, call that person, and ask them to tell you what no one else in the company wants to tell you. It was really an amazing thing to tell you what other people really think about working for you. And when we all came back, the faces were kind of grave, and serious, because no one had really taken the time to ask and to get that kind of feedback. And when they got it, well, it wasn't always a happy thing, right? Because we're charging along thinking that the company is the point. And the company might be the point for you and me who are leading the companies. But for those who work in the company, the relationships are the point. The experience is the point. It's not the company itself. And the relationships and the experience, well, they're going to be dominated not just by what has to be done, but how we ask them to do it. And that how is going to be a reflection through our choices of the inner world that we carry inside of ourselves. It's just the truth. And this is the great opportunity for Christians to step into that. Here's Jesus, who's calling priests to serve him and saying, I don't do this so that you do something for me. I do this because I want you to know me like friends. It was not you who chose me, but I who chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit and that your fruit should abide. And John Paul II finishes there in paragraph 5, and he says, at the end of this letter, I offer these words to you as a wish. On the day of your institution of the sacrament of the priesthood, let us make this wish for one another, that we may go and bear fruit, and that our fruit may abide. In other words, John Paul II is steering us to say, don't confuse leadership with efficiency. Don't confuse leadership with just action. Realize that leadership is about impact more than action. And that impact happens through action, and yet the impact is more important than the action. And what's that impact? The way that our relationships, the way that our people are built up, understood, receive more from us than commands and clarity. That they receive relationship, affirmation, healing, encouragement, things that come from the inside, things that really count.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
In the year 2000, Pope John Paul II wrote another letter to priests, not just 1997, but in this one, he echoes a similar theme. It's in paragraph number 7. He says that the priesthood of Christ, so the priesthood that Jesus lives, is not incidental, a task which he might or might not have assumed. Rather, it is integral to his identity as the Son incarnate, as God made man. From now on, the relationship between mankind and God passes wholly through Christ. Okay, so he's saying here something really beautiful, and that's that the priesthood itself is a part of the identity of Christ. And obviously, this is a little bit different for you who are, lay people in the world, because in many ways, the form of your leadership is incidental, right? It's not your identity to be the owner of a business. It's not your identity to be the civic leader, of the YMCA in your local town. I think I just kind of laugh about that because I'm like, remember that, right? Because sometimes we have so much pain on the inside that we are tempted to identify ourselves with those kind of like more superficial ways of leading, right? So let's be careful about that. Leadership for us takes different types of forms, which are incidental. But at the same time, there's something that's part and parcel of who we are as a Christian that belongs integrally to our very identity in Christ. And that's that whatever we do to glorify God and to save humanity. Okay, so that our souls are made one with Jesus, so that the work that we do becomes an extension of his love for the universe. So even though it might take forms that can change and that are not, do not identify us to the core of our being like the priesthood does. I mean, for a priesthood in the Catholic Church, the way we understand priesthood is that, yes, that really identifies you. Your soul is marked in a unique way. Okay, that's not the same if you're running a business or if you're running, this or that kind of thing. But at the same time, what you can embrace in this is John Paul II saying that who you are will express itself by acts of love through these different things. And those acts of love are written in Christ, that he is speaking his mystery through you. This is why I got to go back to the theme of this particular, these letters, which is that theme of seeing a deeper message in what we do. I mean, because I could talk to you till I'm blue in the face about ethics and, how important it is to be ethical business. And you could yawn all day long until you realize that the reason we focus on ethics as Catholics in business isn't because there's rules for us to follow, but because we see business as something that we are doing from, authentically from the inside, something we're responsible for. Okay. It's something that is a gift of myself. Yes, we are called to live at a deeper level as a Christian. And a Christian means that I'm doing what I do as part of an eternal gift of God to this world. A small little part, but it's taken up into that. Like, people should be able to see by my demeanor, my leadership, they should be able to glimpse something of the love of God for them. I mean, the Catholic Church, defines this in 6 ways, saying that leaders should see business. The first thing that we have to do to reflect the image of God in the world is to make sure that our goods that we give are really good and that the services that we provide really serve. So the authenticity of our work. The second thing that we should do is that we should make sure that the work that we do benefits the poor. That we employ people, in other words, that we employ them at a just wage. It's not too much to ask. It's kind of like, how could we dare say that our work is a reflection of the love of God if in fact we're exploiting the various people that we employ, right? Or that the work doesn't benefit anybody. Well, love always benefits, and love benefits especially those who are in need of it, right? More than anyone else. So, and then the work itself, third thing, it has to be something that is done with dignity. We can't say we love God in our work if we're not, benefiting the workers in a way that really lifts them up. And then fourth point, that trains them, that makes them better. What an opportunity this is to make your work, your business, something that is really a reflection of the love of God by making sure that everyone who works for you has a chance to develop, bear responsibility, use their mind. I always reflect back to my own little, experience when I had the worst job that I've ever had. And I can't picture many jobs being worse than this one, honestly. I was a chicken egg gatherer in rural Ohio, okay? We were making $3.65 an hour working in chicken coops that were over 100 degrees. I mean, it was just absolute misery. And I did it in part just because I didn't want to quit, right? It's just something deep down inside of my bones that refuses to quit. But so there I was, age 14, picking chicken eggs for $3.65 an hour. And there was very little in that work that was trying to lift us up. There was no pathway forward. There was no training or encouragement. There was just get it done, put the eggs in the refrigerator and ride your bike home. You should be happy you get a paycheck. That's not the way that it's supposed to be, right? Well, do your workers feel that way? If our work is supposed to give the love of God, then it should have that characteristic to it, that the people that work there are built up by the work. And then, of course, the fifth point is that a work that bears the love of God should be a work that survives. And therefore, profit is a real goal. It's not the only goal. It's not an absolute goal, but it has to be there, and by so doing, growing the business is a part of the thing, because a business is a good thing. How could there be too much of a good business, right? And then the fifth thing is that the wealth should be given and, in part shared with the needy, shared with the community, so that the business builds it up. Okay, so those 6 little tasks that the Catholic Church lays out there are a very helpful guide for us for this foundational principle, right? That the Pope is reminding priests of here. And that is that there's a deeper story to what you do.
Learning how to give ourselves well is an essential aspect of Christian leadership, and great challenging from Dare Great Things podcast this week. Of course, as you continue to find shows like this, easy to do, you want more on this episode or others like it, check it out at Podcast Central when you go to EWTN.com/podcast. I am Ace McKay, bowing out. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Remember to let God define who you are, and I'll see you again with Catholics Coast to Coast.